Welcome to our new project. This is a summary of a paper called The Remnants, which I have written and uploaded on Researchgate. The plot of the paper begins at 3 a.m. at a barb camping site, where Mr. and Mrs. Mateo are awakened up by several soft knocks on the door. Going there, they find their two sons, Moses and Elijah. It is at this moment that Elijah asks his parents, who are the remnants, what are their characteristics, and whether he should become one of them. In a confused state, Mr. Mateo asks his son, what tricks are you playing on us, Elijah? Elijah, utterly confused, responded in surprise, tricks? What tricks, Dad? The plot then shifts, where Joshua finds a scroll presented to him and he is told to read. I will now read this scroll. At that time, a small heaven will be established on earth. Justice, peace, mercy, fairness, righteousness, honesty, harmony, obedience, and equity in opportunities and resources will fill the entire world. Hatred, desolation, corruption, disobedience, lies, deception, aggressiveness, betrayal, and hypocrisy will be long gone. Vices such as income inequality, hunger, childlessness, homelessness, and exploitation will disappear. Basic needs like food, shelter, clothing, education, and healthcare, once among the most expensive and unaffordable necessities, will become abundant and easily accessible to all. Everyone will be filled with the goodness of God. Oppression will cease, virtues will far exceed vices, and the entire world will resonate with love and compassion. Diseases that have plagued humanity for so long, especially lifestyle illness such as cancer and diabetes, will be eradicated. All forms of suffering will end, global conflicts and chaos will cease, and peace will prevail in all nations. The greatest treasures, truth and transparency, so often suppressed in today's world, will replace deception. Through collaboration, trust, and cooperation, surplus will replace scarcity. All artificial barriers to abundance, such as patenting, technological limitations, high user fees, and profit-driven monopolies and oligopolies, will be dismantled. Information and knowledge will flow freely, no longer exploited for selfish gains like making money, manufacturing weapons, or oppressing others. These transformations will lead to dramatic surge in global productivity and output, increasing by tens of times. The true family structure and its dignity, one that includes a mother, a father raising their children together, will be restored as the barriers that hinder marriage and promote single parenthood are dismantled. This includes eliminating the high cost of living, reimagining the education system, and challenging false narratives surrounding women's independence. Modern leadership, characterized in many countries by self-interest, deception, bureaucracy, hypocrisy, corruption, bribery, and other vices, will be replaced by a new system rooted in godly principles of abundance, love, mercy, fairness, and justice. The capitalistic economic system, driven by self-centeredness and the profit motive, though it has brought notable progress to many nations, will be dismantled in favor of a God-centered economy based on cooperation and collaboration to meet all human needs and maximize well-being. The associated capitalistic systems, largely rooted in falsehoods, including education, work, and trade, will be restructured to align with this newly established godly system. Geographical barriers dividing nations, along with the divide and rule policies that sustain them, will crumble. All people and countries will unite to form a single, loving, interconnected community known as the United States of the Earth. At that time, there will be order, discipline, and harmony throughout the world. Everyone will regard others as their brothers and sisters, and the concept rooted in selfishness and individualism, such as my people or our people, will disappear. People will be free to migrate, work, and live wherever they choose. Divisions based on religion, wealth, and income inequality will vanish. Quality goods and services will be equally accessible to all. There will no longer be high-quality, expensive goods for the rich and low-quality, cheap goods for the poor. Resources once used for making weapons will be redirected towards public welfare, enhancing hospitals, schools, transportation, and housing. The environment will no longer be destroyed in the pursuit of profit. People will coexist harmoniously with nature, restoring the splendor of creation. The false gods of money, hatred, and selfishness, worshipped for so long, will be abandoned in favor of one true God: love, compassion, mercy, cooperation, fairness, justice, and all associated virtues. The Baal civilization, built upon deception, will also collapse. Today, many, especially the elderly, feel relief at the thought of death, knowing that their suffering, oppression, hardships, frustration, and scarcity will finally end, ushering them into a happier, eternal spiritual life free of these burdens. However, in that era, people will regret dying, having experienced such a happy, purposeful, and fulfilling life on earth, uncertain about what awaits them in the next eternal life, even though they have been promised something glorious. You will witness all this in your lifetime before you die. The remnants, and I emphasize again, the remnants will play a crucial role in bringing about this era. So this was the message that was presented to Joshua in a scroll. So Elijah felt all energy drained from him. He covered his face with a scroll and broke down into tears. For so long, he had hoped and dreamed of a time when a small heaven would be established on earth, and now it was here being confirmed that it would happen in his lifetime. So, after reading this message, the scene then changes. Joshua finds himself in a vast treeless field where he is sitting under a tree. He can also see several people heading towards their homes after a busy day. Immediately, the scene also shifts. He finds himself seated on a branch of a tree which has now grown taller to about 15 feet off the ground. And he can also see several elderly men who are sitting in a circle on a grass beneath the tree that he is sitting on its branch. Then he can also see several people who are now going home, coming towards the direction of the tree to shelter under it. He realizes that the elderly men are discussing three topics. The first one is establishing a small heaven on earth. The second one is enhancing the global peace. And the third one is about the remnants. Then one of the elderly men, Ezekiel, looks up and calls out to Joshua, "Hey there, are you a remnant?" It is at this moment that Joshua looks around and notices that everyone, including his parents, who are also seated around the tree, have their eyes fixed on him, awaiting his answer. So he glances up the tree and to the sides as if it's someone else who was being addressed. And when he realizes that all attention is solely focused on him, he finally responds, "A remnant? Who is a remnant?" It is at this point that he wakes up. So Mrs. Mateo was among the people who were resting at that tree, and he witnessed everything as it unfolded. So when Joshua was asked whether he was a remnant and all eyes were turned to him, he looked at his parents in confusion. His mother was filled with sympathy, but he could not assist him. So it was at this moment that Mrs. Mateo and Mr. Mateo had several knocks on the door, and they woke up. "Who is it?" they asked. "It is us," Elijah replied. "Joshua and Elijah, but it is 3 a.m. What do you want at this hour?" Then Elijah replied, "Dad, it's urgent. Please come." So then they crept cautiously towards the door and opened it. So let's begin by answering the first question. Who are the remnants? Remnants are a small group of individuals who stand for truth. They seek transformative change to eliminate all the vices in the world, including inequalities, injustices, and suffering, and in turn establish harmony, unity, and global love. They understand that the current state of the world is not as it should be. Thus, they strive to align it with the Creator's intentions thereby establishing a small heaven on earth. What about the characteristics? So I have about 8 characteristics of remnants, and the first one is that they question a lot and continually search for truth. Remnants continually seek the truth. They understand the world is filled with misinformation, information asymmetry, and false narratives. They question the status quo, delve deep into historical facts, and strive for broader understanding of life, society, and humanity. Remnants believe that the truth and transparency will set the world free and improve life for everyone. There are several systems the remnants recognize as dysfunctional ones they believe require a complete overhaul. So I will mention some of them here. The first one is that the modern employment is questionable. The modern employment is not based on the concept of mutual benefit. It is only the top managerial executives, the consultants, and employers who reap the largest benefits while the employees are paid little. So I have substantiated these claims using several diagrams here where we can see that the ratios of CEO pay to median worker has been rising over the years. If you look at figures 1 and 2, you can also see that employees are only paid a small share of income or output that they help to generate. And employers cannot tell employees the value that they help to generate. For example, if an employer or if an employee generates output worth $1,000, they cannot be told that you helped us to generate output worth $1,000 and here we are paying you $100 because that will create disorder in the company. So the third point is that it is very difficult for employees to get rich through savings, yet they are encouraged to keep savings. So I have calculated the number of years that it would take for an employee to save about $5 million, even without considering inflation, but only considering income growth between 1990 and 2020, between 1991 and 2023, and also the average interest rates and average savings. So considering only these three factors here and the average income in those countries, I computed the number of years. So here you can see that in Japan, it would take about 286 years for an employee to save $5 million. And remember, this is not even considering inflation, while in Colombia, it will take about 62 years. So there's usually a lot of lies in the employer-employee relationship, and I have expounded on these points in details here. Then, the other shortcoming of this relationship is that it creates a situation where we have many employers, where we have few employers who are producers and many employees who are consumers. So that kind of relationship leads to scarcity. Then, the second point is that the concept of business and trade are not based on mutual help. So if you look at the opening statement here by Adam Smith, he put it that it is not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from their regard for their own self-interest. So people who are usually in business and trade, they are not doing that to benefit the consumers, but for their own benefit. So like the employment relationship, businesses are also not designed for mutual help or maximize general welfare, but to generate profit for their owners. So a good business is one that is founded on scarcity. And if there is a lot of surplus in the market, then goods and services will be cheap and profitability will reduce. So for a good business to be sustainable, there has to be scarcity. there has to be scarcity, and that's why I'm saying that the concept of business and trade is not based on mutual help. Then, if you are in a business and you create a long-lasting solution, then the problem you are solving disappears. And if that problem is no longer there, then you don't have a business. So for a business to exist, there has to be a problem, and that problem has to continuously exist. That is, the consumers or the users have to continually keep paying to get a solution. So that is the characteristics of a good business. There has to be scarcity, and then you should not completely solve the problem, because if you solve the problem, then the business will no longer exist. So that's why remnants question the business arrangement. Then there is also the question of deceit. There's usually a lot of deceit that goes on in businesses, because it is very hard for the business people or for the traders to tell the consumers the exact amount or the exact cost that they have incurred in buying a product or a good. So, for example, there is no way that a business person can tell a customer that they bought a product, maybe say for $1,000, and they are selling for you at $2,000. So most of the times they will charge expensively, especially if you don't know the price. So the concept of business encourages deceit. The last point there is that the concept of business is in conflict with the social objective. And I've given one example here. So the pursuit of profit maximization often conflicts with social objectives or the common good. So I have given an example of the housing market here, where the value of the real estate worldwide has been increasing. So you can see the global real estate valuation here, and also global real estate revenue. So the two have been increasing, but still the share of people who live in slums or who don't have houses is still very high, at about 33%. So about 33% of the people in low and lower middle income countries, they live in slums. So it is very difficult for businesses to venture into providing high quality, affordable housing for these people, because that kind of investment will not generate enough returns. So they would better invest where there is high returns. So that's how the concept of business conflicts with the social objective. So the other issue that the remnants question about is the huge significant pay disparity between people's servants, that is leaders and legislature, and people's incomes. So if you consider a sample of 96 countries, on average, a politician earns 4.04 times the income per person, while a person in legislature earns 2.71 times the income per person. So if we consider the pay by income group, politicians and leaders in a low-income country earn 5.28 times the income per person in those countries, while in lower middle income countries, the ratio is 6.83. So the ratio is smallest in high income countries, which is rather paradoxical, because we would expect that in low income countries, the ratio should be the smallest, but it is not. So we can also consider the categorization by pay type, and you can also see that, for example, a prime minister earns 3.68 times in an average of 54 countries, while a president earns 4.41 times the income per person in 36 countries. So if we consider the categorization by legislature type, then we can see the story is almost the same. So one may argue that the higher pay to politicians and leaders is designed to discourage corruption and to make them serve the public in the best way possible, or to look into the interest of the public. However, if you look at this table, so which unfortunately the most recent data that I got was from 2013, political parties are ranked or were ranked the most corrupt institution in a sample of 51 countries. So it is very difficult for us now to argue that the high salaries achieve their objective of deterring corruption by the officials. So generally the officials and the legislature, they should earn the same as the ordinary person so that they can bear the consequences of their policies and not earn several multiples far higher than the median earner. Then another point is that a proper functioning society should have minimum or negligible number of single parents. But if you look at the data, we find that the share of children born out of marriage has been rising over the years. This is in the OECD countries. So you can see that the ratio of children born out of marriage in OECD has risen by more than a multiple of 9. So at the same time, the growth of marriages has been declining, and we cannot attribute this to the decline in the females or to husbands ratio, which has remained more or less stable. So this indicates that there are systemic factors that are preventing people from getting children within the marriage, and also they are hindering them from marriage. Then the other point is that the food processing industry and food business contributes to food insecurity. So the first way is that people consume food that they have to believe was well prepared by individuals or by farmers who are not after money, but who were after the health or the wellness of the consumers. But this is rather a far-fetched assumption, because when we look at the trust data globally, only about 25% of people trust one another. So if trust is this low, and then people have to believe that whatever they are eating was grown by well-intentioned farmers who are not after money, but rather who are after improving the health of the consumers, then that is a rather far-fetched assumption. Then, the other reason why I argue that the food processing industry contributes to food insecurity is that recently there has been a massive increase in the consumption of processed foods, which are unhealthy, and the result has been increase in health-related diseases like obesity, diabetes, and cancers. And I have tried to illustrate that using these figures here, figure 5, plot 1 and plot 2. You can see that the prevalence of diabetes has been rising in USA, the same as obesity. And also I have also given the statistics for other diseases as well, and this can partly be attributed to the increase in consumption of processed foods. I have tried to give several evidences here. So the other issue is that education is no longer improving global productivity. So between 1990 and 2023, gross tertiary education enrollment increased from 14% to 43%, but the global productivity growth stagnated. Actually, it declined from 3.14% to 1.68% between 2007 and 2024. And these trends are presented in figure 6 in plot 1 and plot 2. So plot 1 shows rise in gross tertiary schools enrollment, while plot 2 shows the trends in global labor productivity growth. So there seems to be a disconnect between increase in education and enrollment and global productivity growth. So the second point is that education is not contributing to the rise of employers. So although many people are enrolling in higher education, most of them are adding up to be employees and not employers. As you can see here, the share of employers by region has been declining in most of the regions, for example, in Latin America and Middle East, despite an increase in tertiary education enrollment. So most of the graduates, they become employees and not employers. The other point is that education has not solved the global skills shortages problem. So as you can see the statistic here, the Manpower Group reported that global talent shortages increased from 36 to 75% between 2014 and 2024. So despite increase in enrollment, then there is severe skills shortages, and you can see the ranking of the most important skills here that are in shortage. For example, soft skills is collaboration and teamwork, and technical skills is IT and data. So I also explained that there is need to closely monitor the labor market dynamics so that we can avoid oversupply or undersupply of workers. If you look at the data here, this is the data that I would like us to discuss about. There is this finding by Strada that in an analysis of 60 million workers, the organization found that 52% of all the graduates, they remain underemployed 1 year after graduation, and the figure becomes 45% after 10 years. So after 10 years, 45% of all the graduates in USA are still underemployed. So you can see that there's something wrong with the way education works, and there is need to restructure it. So then here, if you look at the USA medical schools application and acceptance rates, I was arguing that, or rather, it is argued that there is a problem because you see that the application to medical schools has been rising in USA, but the acceptance rates has been declining. So although many people would have liked to go and undertake medical courses, there are still structural barriers that prevent them from doing so. Then, to ensure basic needs provision to everyone and reduce suffering, there is need to increase the share of individuals who own lands and houses. Here, I tried to find data and found that globally, only about 16% of individuals own land alone. Those who own land jointly is also about 16.64. Alone is about 16.12. Those who own houses alone in a sample of 51 countries is 18.79, and those who own houses jointly is only about 19.28%. So globally, most people don't own land, and they also don't own houses. That means that they are renters or they are tenants. So to solve that, to ensure that or to reduce suffering, then there is need to ensure that these people, they get land and also they get houses. In the next point, I argue that larger populations are better than smaller ones. I give an example where between 1980 and 2022, various countries implemented population control measures in an attempt to increase their standards of living. However, the consequences were that the birth rate per woman globally fell from 3.73 in 1980 to 2.27 in 2022. Other consequences were a rise in the share of the aging population, decline in labor force, and gender imbalances, especially in countries like China, which implemented one-child policy in 1979. The claim that high population inherently leads to poverty, that is low output or lower living standards, appears to be misguided. If we look at figure 9, there appears to be a positive relationship between population shares and GDP shares. That is, countries with higher population shares also have higher GDP shares. Countries have also been spending heavily, especially the OECD ones, on children welfare in an attempt to reverse the declining trends in fertility rates. So if you look at the trends in the population growth in the OECD, it declined from 0.9 to about 0.5 between 1990 and 2020. The fertility rate has also been falling, but the children expenditure to GDP has been rising, indicating that these countries want to have more children and not fewer ones. If we look at the diagram if we look at plot 5, we can also see that the one-child policy has had adverse effects on the long-term population trends in China. The other issue is that urbanization has contributed to high cost of living. If we group the countries by their urban population or their share of urban population, we group them into 4 countries, and we examine the evolution in their cost of living index, we see that countries with the highest share of the urban population have got the highest cost of living. That is Q4 compared to Q1. So what is needed is a balanced development to ensure that the high cost of living in urban areas is mitigated. The other area that remnants feel that need to be addressed is our economic system. The problem with the capitalistic economic system is that it is based on money, and the problem with money is that it is based on limited supply. So I argue that an economy operating without money would have better outcomes compared than the one operating with it. So I will give several points to substantiate this claim. First, I argue that scarcity drives individuals to prioritize strategies that maximize income rather than generate the greatest social value. I have given 2 examples. First, I've given an example of a nurse or a teacher. If a nurse or a teacher is earning $1,000 per month, and that is his passion, and he or she or they get an opportunity to earn $10,000 per month, then if the cost of living is high in their region, then they will consider going into business and earning $10,000 per month compared to continuing with their profession and earning $1,000 per month. I've also given another example of agriculture. Because of the perceived low agricultural productivity, many people don't prefer people don't prefer going into that sector or working in that sector. So because of the low wages or the low productivity, so they would prefer to work in other areas with high productivity despite their passion or despite their interest in agriculture. Then, second, I argue that the monetary system fosters dishonesty, and all the issues that we see about corruption, about scandals, all those issues, they originate from the scarcity of money or greed that is pioneered by, or greed that is brought about by money. Then I also argue that the growth of money supply, although it stimulates economies, rapid increase in money supply does not mean that productivity has increased. So money supply can be increasing, but that does not mean that productivity has increased. I've given an example in figure 12 where we see a rapid growth in money supply, which has been followed by a rapid increase in government debt, but that does not mean that productivity has increased. Another limitation of the monetary system is that it tends to perpetuate inequality because of the because of the differences in perceived because of the differences in perceived productivity, there will always be people who are earning more and those who are earning less. So in such a situation, then if we will continue with the monetary economic system, then inequality will never end because people will always earn differently. There will always be people who are earning more than the others. I give another limitation of the monetary system, whereby the monetary system also fosters a tendency to restrict supply in order to maintain profitability. So I explain about the issues of patenting, monopolies, just like I was trying to explain in the point of the concept of business, that it is not based on mutual help. The same case here, we see that there is tendency to restrict supply in order to maximize profitability. So eliminating money would accelerate the speed of technology, foster abundance rather than artificial scarcity. Then I argue that the monetary system and its surrounding structures promote individualism. In today's economy, people live in constant fear that circumstances would worsen, coupled with little expectation of support from others. That's why most of them, they have to rely on their savings and insurance as safeguards. So if we could have a system that is not built around individualism, then people would not be saving and they would not be taking insurance policies. Rather, they would be using that money, or they would be using their resources on other people to develop other people. And then when they have an issue or when they have a problem, then other people can also help them. So that's why I was explaining here that in contrast, an alternative system, one I explore later, which I call Godrism, could shift this paradigm. Instead of people holding resources or insuring against personal risks, then they might invest in each other's growth and development through mutual support and cooperative relationship, strengthening social bonds rather than fueling competition. In such a system, the fear diminishes, risks are shared collectively, and robust support networks replace insurance schemes, reducing insecurity. So the new system handles savings and insurance differently because people insure in one another and they also save in one another to ensure that everyone develops or everyone grows. In a managed society, resources once reserved for savings could be redirected to elevate everyone's standards of living, fostering a collective commitment to mutual well-being. Then capitalism also constrains self-discovery because individuals are forced to go into jobs to look for money, and it is very difficult to pursue their own passions, like I explained previously. So in reality, people need freedom to embark on a personal journey to uncover their true selves, identify their passions, explore what they love, question the status quo, and imagine better ways of doing things. However, under capitalism, many end up disconnected from their passions, trapped in roles dictated by economic necessity rather than personal fulfillment. Therefore, I argue that as long as we have an economic system that promotes scarcity and deprivation, crime will also never cease because people have to do everything to get the share of the limited resources. We therefore need a system that reimagines economic life, but which is as efficient as capitalism, one that maximizes resource distribution, spreads prosperity widely, enhances individual freedom, sparks imagination and independent thought, encourages mutual support over exploitation, enables people to realize their full potential, live purposefully, and express their creativity. The new system should also address the fear of scarcities and future uncertainties, that is, through mutual support. It must appreciate the fact that everyone is born with a unique talent and thus should not seek to homogenize them. That is, the system should not seek to homogenize people the way capitalism does. So let me also read this paragraph. Such a system would minimize selfishness and alleviate suffering, oppression, and exploitation tied to capitalism and money. It should facilitate value exchange without currency, rooted in abundance rather than scarcity. That is, the new system should prioritize abundance rather than scarcity, prioritize support and cooperation over competition, unite people, add inequalities, and raise the declining global trust. The new framework would shift the economic focus from accumulating wealth to sharing value, lessening control of the global economy from a handful of few individuals and corporations who perpetuate scarcity. Remember, as we saw, the globally there are very few employers. About the share of employers to the total population, or per 1,000 people, is about 4 to 6%. And that need not be the case. We need as many people as possible to be producers and not consumers. That is, we need many people to be employers and not employees. So here I'm using the word consumers and employees synonymously because it is the employees who are the consumers, and instead ensuring abundance and equitable resource distribution. The system should ensure that resources used in making luxuries for the rich under capitalism are first directed to improve the quality of life for all, like education, healthcare, and innovation. So I have described such a system below. I have started with showing examples of other systems that have been suggested, including gift economy, time-based economies, socialism, the Venus Project, collaborative common, and I've given those examples and then suggested then given my suggestion, which is Godism, and described it here. And I have also indicated how it could solve the problems of capitalism, which I have described above. So you can read all this and see how it addresses the above drawbacks of capitalism. So the next point about the characteristics of remnants is that they love all people and all creation of God without any discrimination whatever. They have mercy, they are peace-loving, and they seek at uniting the world. They seek at having a single united world called the United States of the world, or United States of the earth. Then they hate scarcity and aim to eliminate it. They also detest greed and selfishness. They stand for fairness and justice, and they are transformative. So should one become a remnant? One should undoubtedly aspire to become a remnant. It offers a profound sense of purpose, fulfillment, and accomplishment. This path calls for the courage to challenge the prevailing norms and the conviction to stand for what is right, even when it is unpopular or difficult. Being a remnant presents a rare opportunity to reshape broken systems, drive meaningful social change, and positively impact the lives of others. However, it is not an easy journey. It often demands the sacrifice of personal comfort for the greater good. One must be emotionally and mentally prepared to face resistance and criticisms from those who are attached to the status quo and fear the disruption that the change brings. Thus, becoming a remnant requires deep commitment and selflessness, motivated not by the pursuit of recognition or personal gain, but by noble altruistic deeds that reflect the highest aspiration of humanity. So that was the summary of the paper called The Remnants. In the next project, I will develop or build a real-time two-way chat applications that will allow easy communication between government authorities, that is officials and politicians, with the people. So until then, goodbye.